Hmm. Hey, so last time we learned up to this part, since the real yet unreal can create confusion. So that is the Buddha summarized the teaching in the verses. Since the real yet unreal can create confusion, I have refrained from revealing it to you. It might be said on searching for the mind, that which at heart is not illusion become illusory. So the real yet unreal can create confusion. So if we don't recognize the real one, that's why we confuse, right? The real is in our pure nature. I have refrained from revealing it to you. It might be said on searching for the mind, that's without hurt is not illusion, become illusory. So if we search for the mind, and that is the illusory, that which at heart is not illusion. So as much as we have the mind searching, uh, we could not recognize the pure mind. Is it understandable, right?
Yes.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
That the sense then. Yeah, please.
If you stop all grasping, there is nothing real. If what is not illusion ceases to arise, where can illusion be? This is the profound lotus dharma law, the precious bodhi of the royal gem, the samadhi of seeing all things as illusion, which in a finger snap leads to the state beyond all study, the unsurpassed doctrine. Oh, was the state beyond all study. The unsurpassed doctrine was followed by all Bhagavats in all directions, on the one path that to nirvana leads. So if you stop grasping, then there is nothing real. Like, let's see, a good example in my life is, okay, so I can understand that all perceived phenomena are impermanent and I can't find myself in them. But when my family does something that, like my brothers or sisters, that makes me feel slighted, automatically it's real. Like, it's just like the habit they're talking about, it like the habits that are present flow like ceaselessly. So because and the reason it's real and it evokes an emotional reaction in me is because there's still grasping. There's grasping at the relationship being a certain way, and that having myself being relative to it. So if it's not a certain way, then things aren't as good for me. If it is a certain way, then things are better for me. But if I'm in that state of meditation where there's no grasping, there's no solidification of preference, and there's no distinctions being made. So in that sense, there's not the conclusion that anything is real or unreal. There's no conclusions made. And then if what is not illusion, so what is real, ceases to arise, where can illusion be? Yes, so if we have no more concept, we're not clinging to a concept of something being real, something being true, then also at the same time, we're not going to cling to something being an illusion. Because this idea that all things is illusion, it also can, if we hold on to it as like the finger pointing at the moon, if we hold on to, oh, this is illusion, well, it's just as much of an obstruction as this is real.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because then we may push it away instead of grasp onto it. Neither way, we're stuck. And so it's really that's why the description of the true nature must, like, why that description must be used is because the nature of something, nothing needs to happen for it to be. It just simply is. So, and this is the sort of, when they're talking about the great way, the path that's followed by all the Bhagavats, the one path that leads to nirvana, because at some point, all of the different ways ultimately coalesce into that ultimate single way, where we go beyond many and single, and there can no longer be distinctions made to say, oh, I follow this way, you follow that way. The ultimate, there is only one way. Once we get through other delusions to come to it. So yeah, very, very beautiful.
So come down to the awareness of the pure nature, and that's all, right? We go beyond the talking, go beyond the thinking, go beyond the rational minds. Actually, I just have the discussion with Dr. Michael. You heard about the DBT, right? You know, the rational mind, emotional mind, and wise mind. You heard about that?
Not in the detail through DBT. I don't think we covered that in our talks, because I know the detail I know about DBT is from the papers that we read. I don't remember covering those three.
Right here. Let me see that. The rational mind. Can you see? Of course, knowledge intellectually, thinks logically, and use past experience, use the facts and research, as well as the planning focus. Emotional mind, reason, and logical thinking difficult. Use only emotion to make decision. Reactive, tell us how we are doing. Use the core psychology need. The wise might use intuitive thinking. Here the trick. What's meant by intuitive thinking? What do you think? What's the difference between rational mind and emotional mind? Of course.
Yeah. So, intuitive thinking, it arises out of mindfulness, where there's the solution is usually in the direction of ease. It's not something that has to be some elaborate solution or some hard thought out thing. And it's definitely not a reactive response. There's a sort of natural flow to it that's balanced with the situation.
Okay, yeah, that's important. That's right. Living mindfully instead of being focused. So when someone's so serious, they're so focused, they have a headache, right? Right? They may have headache, they may have stress, right? If they focus so much, and if they use their emotional, if you use their emotion to decide on something else, that type of emotion can cover the wisdom that cannot make the right decision. For example, let's say somehow the children, when they fall down, they cry, right? Because the pain. But when we don't recognize that, oh, they fall because they didn't pay attention on the block or on the rock that on the road. So that's a big lesson for them. So instead of remind them, okay, next time, please be careful while you're walking. Don't step on them, or don't, you have to watch under your feet. So instead of saying that, we say, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, it's so hurtful, and so forth and so forth, right? One is we follow their emotion. One is we use the wisdom to remind them. The next time they're not supposed to. The next time they have to be mindful why they why they are walking. Yeah. Anyway, so this is spirit nice. So that's why somehow they use like Buddhist philosophy. They use like the Zen philosophy here. Yeah. That's what they call the third wave of therapies. All right, let's move on the next one here. How to untie the slip knots. First, Ananda and the assembly listened to the compassionate Buddha's inspired sermon, and the others whose profound meanings were so enlightened and penetrating that their mental eyes were opened. They praised what they had never seen before. Ananda then brought his palms together, prostrate, and said, I have today listened to Buddha's compassion teaching, which revealed the pure, subtle, and permanent duality of the self nature, but I'm still not clear about how to untie the slip knots, one after the others, and what you meant by when the slip knots are undone. The one also vanish. Will you again take pity on this assembly and future generation and teach us in order to wash our defilements away? So even up to now, he couldn't understand how to untie the slip knots. He just used his analytical thinking. So I just have discussion with Dr. Michael about the book Instant Zen, and it say that, well, whichever you say, birth or death, go beyond birth or death is not much important. That whether you can see, you can experience that or not, is more important. The talking is cheap. That's the point.
Yeah.
Experience that. Yeah. Yeah, please. Yeah.
The Buddha who was on his lion seat adjusted his inner garments and outer robe, and took from the teapot a piece of beautiful cloth which the Yamadeva had given him. Then, in the presence of the assembly, he tied a knot and showed it to Ananda, asking, What is this? Ananda and the others replied, It is a knot. The Buddha then tied another knot and asked, What is this? They all replied, This also is a knot. The Buddha tied 4 more knots, showing each to Ananda and asking, What is this? They all replied that each was a knot. So I find myself, thinking and trying to conceptualize that which is beyond thinking and conceptualization occasionally. And sometimes I think of it kind of like, if the Buddha nature was like an endless sheet of paper, and then you had origami folding out of it, or like an endless quilt, and you had, knots. They're like the ocean and the waves. I think that analogy is much more common. And so that in that sense, that the senses, when they're upside down, are like, they in essence are the Buddha nature, but knotted by our, by our thinking. And so it seems to be a really apt metaphor that, how do we untie them so that we see the Buddha nature through them, instead of obscuring our perception of the Buddha nature, or our awareness of the Buddha nature.
Yeah, so this part the Buddha just demonstrate for them how he tied out the knot and how he untied the knot, right? He tied out one by one. Yeah. So the Buddha said to Ananda, when the first tied the cloths, you called the knot. There's only one piece of cloth, but why did you call the second and third ties also knots? Ananda replied, we're only ones until there's only one piece of cloth. If you tie it once, there will be a knot. That if you tie it 100 times, there will be 100 knots. but this class has only 6 knots because you only tie 6 times. Why do you agree to my calling? The first tie a knot and disagreed to the second and third ones also being called knots. So Ananda explained, well, only one cloth, but if the Buddha ties 6 knots in one cloth, or 100 knots in one cloth is the same. But so he argued that why do you agree that I call the first, but you don't agree? I mean, that he asked Buddha, why don't you agree with me that the second and third and so called the knot too? That he played trick with you, Buddha? What do you think?
I think it's got to be relating back to Ananda's question about untying the 6 knots and then also the one vanishes. So I'm wondering if the cloth is representing the one somehow, like the mind that maybe those, the knots of the senses are tied into. But I kind of have the same question as Ananda. Like, yeah, where is this going? Why call the second and third ties also knots? Yeah, they seem like they would also be knots.
Yeah, please. Yeah, the next one.
The Buddha said, Ananda, originally there was only one piece of cloth, but when I tied it 6 times, there were 6 knots. As you see it, the length of cloth was the same before, but is now different with its 6 knots. The first knot I tied was called the first one, and altogether I tied 6 of them. Do you think that the 6th one can be called the first knot? Ananda replied, no, world-honored one. So long as there are 6 knots, the last one is the 6th and cannot be called the first. Even if I discuss this for the rest of my life, how can I number these 6 knots in the wrong order? Yeah, I mean, that logic tracks. Is that it'd be hard to call the 6th one the first one unless you were going to say which is the first one I'm going to untie. You may untie the 6th one first, but as that's the first knot I'm going to untie, but it wasn't the first knot that was tied. So I'm curious to hear what the Buddha says next. I'm not sure where he's going.
Then the Buddha say, it is so. These 6 knots are different, but come from one length of cloth, and you cannot reverse the order. It is the same with your 6 sense organs, which through coming from the same source are manifestly different. Ananda, clearly you object to the 6 knots before one piece of cloth, but how can you obtain it? Ananda replied, if these 6 knots remain, concept of right and wrong will rise in great confusion. We should attain as this knot is not that one and that's not this one. One once, if all knots were you untied it, there would remain nothing, and will complete elimination of thisness and thatness. There, and in the absence of even one, how can there be 6? So Ananda, he understand, right? Whether we tie the knot or untie the knot, it's just the same cloth. This is go beyond thisness and thatness. It's just the talking. Yeah, please.
The Buddha said, likewise, when the 6 knots are untied, the one also vanishes. It is because of confusion in your mad minds since the time without beginning that your intellect gives rise to illusions, the unceasing creation of which disturbs your seeing and causes it to perceive objects in the same way that troubled eyes see dancing flowers. Hence, in the clear and bright reality arise without any cause all worldly phenomena, such as mountains, rivers, the great earth, samsara, and nirvana, which are but dancing flowers created by confusion, trouble, or passions, and inversion. Yeah. So um again, this like restating this idea that the reason we see separation and distinctions is because we've kind of are in this state of like madness of the mind, and that our distinctions are really illusory, and the unceasing creation of these illusions of the intellect are what disturbs the true seeing and causes us to perceive objects. And so it's like the mind conceptualizing objects as real is similar to when we're staring into the sky, and if you look at or just look at a wall for long enough, and then you start to just see patterns or things emerge, where there's sense data that can be distinguished and said, okay, it looks like this or looks like that, but ultimately it's just an illusion. And he's saying the same is that's basically what we call reality is the same as that. And that in the clear and bright reality, arise without any cause, all worldly phenomena. So there's no in that there's no questions about the mountain, or there's no questions about the rivers to strain over to try to be able to explain them and describe them and limit them in some way, which ultimately is going to be just relative. Anything that we did say anyways. Yeah, there's I still feel like there's still something else here that it's kind of pointing at, that it kind of is at like a little bit outside of my understanding.
Okay, so here I put this way. Let's see here. So according to this teaching, it said that the mountain, the river, the forest, and so forth are illusion, right? But are they illusion? What do you think?
Well, they're just not. If we think they're real, then we need to be told they're illusions. But if we think they're illusory, then we need to let go of making distinctions about real or illusory.
Yeah. Um, hmm. That's the problem for people they encounter when they read this kind of passage. And so basically, whether it's real or illusion, this is there. Whether we recognize them or not, this is more important. And the important thing is that whether it's real or illusion is not much important than how we keep our mind at peace, how we keep our mind pure, how we remain in the calm way, right? So yes, for common people, they say everything is just real. That's why it's all kind of attachment, right? But if we see everything is unreal or illusion, we run away from that. We cover our ear. We don't want to listen to whichever thing that they want to say bad about us. But in the Zen tradition, or in the essence, would I say, well, this doesn't matter as long as we recognize a pure mind, as long as we remain calm, no matter what people say, whether real, unreal, beautiful, ugly, and so forth. As long as we remain calm, it is more important. That's all, right? Out there is not much important. That's a secondary concern.
Yeah, And we would obscure the nature through thought if we were tied up in causes of mountains and rivers.
Yeah.
Which we couldn't, which wouldn't be which wouldn't really be real or true, just as a sort of relative created understanding.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. All right. So next one. Ananda asks, how can one untie this knot great by trouble and confusion? Then the Buddha held up the piece of cloth, pulled its left hand and asked, can it be untied this way? Ananda replied, no, only once. The Buddha then pulled the right hand and asked, can it be untied this way? Ananda replied, no, only once. The Buddha said, I have pulled both ends of the cloth, but have been unable to untie the knots. What will you do now? Ananda replied, only once. Each knot should be untied in its center. The Buddha said, correct, Ananda, correct. A knot should be untied for its thought. Ananda, Buddha Dharma, which I expound, manifest due to the causes and is beyond those correspond that come from holy concept of mutual and union. When the Buddha reviews the mundane and supreme mundane, he knows their chief causes and concurrent conditions. Even clear that about the number of drops of rain in a place, as many miles away from here as there are sand grains in branches, as well as why pine trees are straight and brambles, crooked, geese white and cold black. Therefore, another choose one organ from the six, and if it's not, is untied, or object of sense will vanish themselves. When all illusion disappear, if this is not reality, what more do you expect? Ananda, tell me now if the six knots of the cloth can be untied simultaneously. So it's long, but in summary, the Buddha say, well, whether we untie on the left from the left or the right end, we could not have to untie from the center of that. So would I say that's you need to take care of your mind. You need to look in yourself. It's the matter of your mind, not the sins, good or bad, left or right. So so the Buddha know the condition of the sentient beings, so he can guide them, and the Buddha advised Ananda to pick up one organ from the six, like pick up one knot so that he can unknot all of them. And he asked further, can we untie the six knots at the same times? So no question about this one, right?
No questions.
Yeah, please, next.
Ananda replied, no, world honored one, because they were originally tied one after the other and should be untied in the same order. Although they are in the same piece of cloth, they were not tied simultaneously. How can they now be untied all at once? The Buddha said, your six organs should be disengaged in the same way. When you begin to disentangle them, you will realize that the ego is void. When this voidness is perfectly clear, you will realize that all Dharma phenomena are void. When you are disengaged from Dharma, the voidness of ego and Dharma will vanish. This is called the patient endurance of the uncreate, achieved by means of samadhi in the bodhisattva stage. Yeah, so here Ananda answers that no, they can't be untied simultaneously, the knots in the cloth, because they were tied one at a time. It's not a series of knots that you can like some knots you can just do one thing and it opens all of them if they're tied a certain way. You can't with these. So the Buddha said they should be dealt with, the 6 organs, sense organs, should be dealt with the same way. And that disentangling them, untying them, will lead to the realization that ego is void. And when that voidness is clear, they'll see that all phenomena are void. And then when one's no longer engaged with dharmas as being real, the voidness of the dharmas and the ego even disappears. And then that's that particular state, the patient endurance of the uncreate. So, but it seems that there's not a set 6th knot, because the Buddha's telling Ananda to choose one of the sense organs. The analogy makes me wonder, like, okay, well, if there's 6 and one's tied last and you should start with the last, then which one is that? It seems that it could be different, dependent upon individuals.
So when he talk about when we disengage in one organs, right, and we will realize that the ego is void. How is that? Let's say if we let go of our attachment from the hearing, so how could our ego is void then?
Yeah, because the ego is like exists relative to sense data in relation to like preference.
Yeah.
So if there's no more preference arising in relation to sense data, I mean, at the same time that that happens, the ego would also lose its like roots. They would have to all kind of go at the same time, I would think.
Yeah. So basically, when you, let's say, we can listen and recognize the voice, the sound only, right? Without saying, "Oh, okay, I'm listening now." So that's that way we can live with a pure nature, heal nature. Otherwise, if we say, "Oh, I'm listening," that means we identify ourselves. Or that's if we indicate that, "Oh, I am listening." With that I am, that's the ego there, right? We get stuck with the, oh, okay, I'm listening and I like this song, that song, I like this voice, that voice, I like this sound, that sound. We get stuck with that category. But if we just listen without claiming or identify ourselves as, oh, okay, I'm listening, with that kind of pure listening, am I more pure? Am I more calm? And that's why we can let go. That's in a sense, the ego will not be there at all if we live with the pure nature. Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. After Ananda and Assembly have heard the Buddha teachings, their understanding were clear and free from doubt and suspicion. Ananda brought his palm together, prostrated himself, and said, "Today our body and mind are clear, at ease, and unhindered. So I have understood what you mean by the experience of both one and six. I am still unable to perfect my sense organs. Once I'm like a lonely wanderer and a helpless of orphans. How fortunate have I been to meet the Buddha and to be his relatives, like hungry baby who suddenly meet his suckling mothers. This give me a chance to attend the holy gold. But until I have listened to his profound words, I am still unawakened as if I have not heard them. Will you please reveal to me the ultimate approach by means of appropriate organs? So say, wow, he praised the Dharma, he understand it, but he loved the Buddha teaching, but somehow he could not comprehend in the practical sense. Yeah, that's why he want the Buddha teach him how to use appropriate organs to untie the attachment, right? Confusion. Yeah, yeah.
After saying this, he prostrated himself and concentrated on his inner potentiality to receive the profound instruction. Thereat, the world-honored one said to the great bodhisattvas and chief arhats in the assembly, I want to ask you, bodhisattvas and arhats, who have practiced my dharma and have reached the state beyond study, this question. When you developed your minds to awaken to the 18 fields of sense, which one did you regard as the best means of perfection? And by what methods did you enter the state of samadhi? So, yeah, Nanda asked this question and bowed afterwards and focused and concentrated inwardly, then to be ready to receive it. And then the Buddha, instead of answering it himself, he asked the others in the assembly to say what did they regard as the best means of perfection.
Yeah, basically this part somehow they left out another translation that it talk about the Buddha asked 25 arhat and bodhisattva to reveal the practice that helped them to attain enlightenment. So some translator didn't put this information in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So now one by one they will explain how they attain enlightenment. Yeah. All right. So meditation on the sixth sense data. Kardinya, one of the first bhikshus, rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha and declared, when soon after his enlightenment, we met the Tathagata in the Magdava and Kuta Park. I heard his voice, understood his teaching, and awakened to the Four Noble Truths. When questioned by the Buddha, I interpret them correctly, and the Tathagata so my awakening by name me Ananta Tori Honors, and his wonderful voice was mysteriously or abrasion. I attained ownership by means of sound. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, to me the sound is the best according to my personal experience. So again, you know him, right? He's one of the first Bhikshu, monk that the Buddha taught, the deep park, right?
The
So
5 ascetics that he initially practiced with.
So here this monk he say, well, when I listen to Buddha voice, I recognize that I attain shaped by means of a sound, especially the teaching of the Four Noble Truths. So he focused on the sound. That's for his own experience, personal experience, and how he attained enlightenment. Yeah. This is some very interesting. Yeah, please.
Upanishad then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, I also met the Buddha soon after his enlightenment. After meditating on impurity, which I found repulsive, and from which I kept, and from which away I kept, I think, must have missed a word. From which I kept, I awakened to the underlying nature of all forms. I realized that even our bleached bones that came from impurity would be reduced to dust and would finally return to the void. As both form and the void were perceived as non-existent, I achieved the state beyond study. The Tathagata sealed my understanding and named me Nissa, after eradicating the relative form. Wonderful form Sarupa appeared mysteriously, all-embracing. Thus I attained arhatship through meditation on form. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, to me, form is the best according to my personal experience. I think this is most in line with what I focus on when I meditate, because what draws me the most is the perception of, like, maybe it's feeling, but it's like also, I mean, the feeling outlines the shape of the body. It's not emotion. It's the actual, like, if I were to think of it scientifically, it's like the proprioceptive input of the body. But he's saying that on meditating, Upanishad was his name, meditating on impurity led him to detach from clinging to forms. And then he saw that the forms themselves were void. There was nothing substantial about them. They just cycle through these different forms. And so that they're void, and that even the void didn't really exist in and of itself either. And that's what helped him to achieve enlightenment.
Yeah. Have you ever read some of the story that after some monks who contemplate the impurity of the body, they ask other monks to kill themselves, to commit suicide? Have you heard about that story?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
So yeah, the Buddha encouraged them to go to the forest where in the past they dumped all the corpse, right? And after they saw that kind of corpse or the impurity of the body, so they feel disgusted with their own body. So they ask other monks to terminate their own life. So Buddha, well, it's wrong way. That's not what I'm trying to teach. Right. So that's why in one of the major precepts the Buddha mentioned that you're not supposed to kill by yourself, and encourage all people to kill, whether kill yourself or kill others. That's to commit the great offense. So by the way, yeah, some people they could not recognize that type of teaching. The Buddha remind us that yes, we need to contemplate and recognize the impurity of body. Doesn't mean that we want to get it off this body. Doesn't mean that we have to kill it, have to harm it, we have to terminate it. No, it just this vessel for us to do the practice. And it's about sometime, even during the Buddha times, some monk they recognize the impurity of the body, and somehow they commit suicide, but on the verge of death, somehow they attain enlightenment. And even in some of that type of exceptional cases, the Buddha praised them. But it's still rare. It's still rare because at that moment, right before they pass away, they attain enlightenment. That's why the Buddha praised for them, but not the one that think, okay, this body is so disgusting, so we need to get it up. That's not what the Buddha meant. Yeah. Anyway, so you see now this is it's very interesting, because here the Buddhas and the Arhat and Bodhisattva, they explain how they attain enlightenment. That's why these translators, he missed that explanation. He should another translation is say clearly in Vietnamese and Chinese one, and even our I mean that the Buddhist Translation Society at City of 10,000 Buddha, yes, they put 25 sages, holy monks and Bodhisattva that explain how they attain enlightenment. But the translator, they left that. He left that part. All right. So a Bodhisattva named Fragrance Adorned then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of Buddha, and declared, "After the Tathagatas have taught me to look into all worldly phenomena, I left him and retired to set my mind at rest. While observing the rules of pure living, I saw a bhikkhu burn a sandal incense. In the stillness, its fragrance entered my nostrils. I inquired into this smell, which was neither sandalwood nor divineness, and neither smoke nor fire, and which had neither whence to come nor whither to go. Thereby my intellect vanished, and I have achieved the state of beyond the stream of commiseration. The Tathagata sealed my awakening and named me Fragrance Adorned. After sudden elimination of the reptile smell, the wonderful fragrance became miserably or abrasion. Thus I attained arahantship by means of smell. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, to me, smell is the best according to my personal experience. So again, so he smelled the sandalwood, right? But he recognized that it go beyond those type of sandalwood smell, right? Neither smoke nor fire, neither sandalwood nor voidness. He recognized that type of smell in nature. That's why he can attain a hardship. So you see that this holy monks and Bodhisattva explain how they attain enlightenment through their sixth sense. And later on, the Buddha asked Ananda which one he choose from, so we can hear from that. Is it interesting, right? This one is understandable, right?
Yeah, and they, none of them seem to have said, okay, I'm going to choose my smell. It seems like it sort of found them. Like they didn't really effort in it.
You can recognize.
But maybe some of us have, I mean, they were riper for enlightenment than maybe than Ananda, or than, you know, someone nowadays like myself.
Okay. Yeah, please.
The two bodhisattvas called Vaisaja Raja and Vaisaja Samudgata were present with 500 Brahmadevas, then rose from their seats, prostrated themselves with their heads at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, "Since the time without beginning, we have been skillful physicians in the world, and have tasted with our own mouths herbs, plants, and all kinds of mineral and stone found in the world, numbering 108,000 in all. As a result, we know perfectly their tastes, whether bitter or sour, salt, insipid, sweet, acrid, etc., their natural, changing, or harmonizing properties, and whether they are cooling, heating, poisonous, or wholesome. We received instruction from the Tathagata and knew clearly that taste was neither existing nor non-existent, was neither body nor mind, and did not exist apart from them. Since we could discern the cause of taste, we achieved our awakening, which was sealed by the Buddha, who then named us Vaisaja Raja and Vaisaja Samudgata. We are now ranked among the sons of the Dharma King in this assembly, and because of our awakening by means of taste, we have attained the Bodhisattva stage. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, to us, taste is the best according to our personal experience." So I'm wondering if we're going to get all of the senses at one point, because it seems that the point of this is that, yeah, it is, any of them can be the sense by which liberation is achieved. And I recognize the Vaisaja Raja and Vaisaja Samudgata. So those are, Vaisaja is the medicine Buddha, the Buddha's Buddha. And he's the medicine Buddha is the name of him. So that these physicians, the Buddha named them after the medicine Buddha makes sense. And similar pattern as the other disciples who already spoke, but in this case it was with taste.
Yeah, so through the taste, so they who is tasting, right? They attain enlightenment, right? Okay, this one here. The Brother Pala, who was with 16 companions, who were all the great Bodhisattva, rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of Buddha, and declared, when the Buddha, with an inspiring voice, appeared in the wood, I heard of the Dharma and left home. At the time of bathing, I followed the rules and entered the bathroom. Suddenly, I awakened to the course of water, which cleans neither dirt nor body. Thereby, I felt at ease and realized a state of nothingness, as I had not forgotten my former practice. When I left home to follow the Buddha in my present life, I achieved a state beyond the study. The Buddha names me the Bhadrapala because of my awakening to wonderful touch and my realizations of the rank of a son of Buddha. As Buddha asks now about the best means of perfection, to me touch is the best according to my personal experience. So we have, right, we have um, the smelling, the taste, and now the touching. He when he took a shower. So that's the beauty of Buddhism, right? It's just not one way. There's many way, right? One way, not one way. It's many way for people to attain enlightenment, and that's why it's good to listen to those kind of explanation. Yes.
Mahakasyapa, who was present with the Bhikshuni, Golden Light, and others of his group, then arose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, in a former eon, when Kandra Surya Pradipa Buddha appeared in this world, I had a chance of following him and of hearing the Dharma, which I practiced. After he passed away, I revered his relics, lit lamps to perpetuate his light, and decorated his statue with pure golden powder. Since then, in every subsequent reincarnation, my body has been radiant with perfect golden light. This Bhikshuni Golden Light and the others who are with her are my retinue, because we develop the same mind at the same time. I looked into the 6 changing sense data, which can be reduced to complete extinction only through the state of nirvana. Thus my body and mind were able to pass through hundreds and thousands of eons in a finger snap. By eradicating all dharma, things and ideas, I realized arhatship, and the world honored one declared that I was the foremost disciplinarian. I awakened to the wonderful Dharma, thereby putting an end to the stream of transmigration. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, to me, Dharma are the best according to my personal experience. Yeah. So Dharma, that this would be then the mind, right? Because the mind is what distinguishes Dharma, because it's like a blossoming flower may have a smell and has a sight, and you can feel it, but that would be like an example of a dharma, right? Like any phenomena, the falling rain, or a crow calling. Is that a correct understanding of dharma? So then this would be using the mind.
And also you understand this type of story?
Yes, in a past life that he had revered this Buddha after, like while they were alive, and followed them, and then after they passed, and that the karma from that is what gave him his like golden radiance. And then he had the affinity with this woman who is now a Bhikshuni, and so she shared the same sort of karma.
So here's the point. Of course, we understand the cause and effect, but let's say for the common people, they ask, how could someone paint the Buddha statue with the golden body, sorry, golden colors, and somehow later on he had the golden body same way as the way that he painted the Buddha? You understand the question?
Yeah.
That's true,
Yeah.
or that's true, or I just only the belief?
Well, I never got to see Mahakasyap's like golden light, and it may be that not everybody could see it. It may be just those with a more sensitive spiritual eye saw this emanation of his devotion to that which is most worthy of devotion, to the Buddha. And I think it's the like it's a manifestation of a mind that's aligned with the true nature, where if he was so sincere and invested so much energy in his reverence to these relics. That's a real testament to how deeply he appreciated the truth of the teachings and the power of the teachings, and that that sort of person would radiate something, that they would have a peace about them that, you know, if it was experienced, like when we're seeing like sunshine, like golden sunshine, it's peaceful. So while it's probably not like in a dark room he would light the room up. I don't think that would be the case, but it's probably more someone with a sensitive perception would feel that vibration or even see it if they had that sensitive like spiritual eye.
Yeah. So in this case, right, Mahakashipa, he recognized as sense data or information or from this just illusion. So he have a kind of awakening. But when we come back to reality, let's say I don't know whether you read some sutra about the cause the fate. So some part is like if we offer the flower to Buddhas, the next life will be more beautiful. That's why many ladies they like to offer like flower to Buddha. So what do you think?
Well, it's I think the quid, like in law, there's this idea of a quid pro quo, and that's sometimes necessary to make a conviction. Like if they're going to convict someone of drug dealing, they have to clearly identify that this person was going to give drugs for money, and that was well understood. And so then they were drug dealing. But you could say, oh, someone was giving them money, and the drugs being given back weren't actually like, that was separate. But if we have a quid pro quo in our mind about that sort of action, if we're offering the flower like we're purchasing a beautiful form, well, then the spirit isn't there, the intention isn't there. It's a very mundane mind state that I don't expect would result in that much blessings. There'd probably still be some blessings, but I think if we had the mind state that we were naturally offering that flower without thinking about what we were getting from it, but it was just our natural expression, we were so moved by the Buddha Dharma or by the Buddha's presence, then yeah, that's like a testimony to the consciousness that we're in, and then that action would carry a different sort of karma that would be more powerful.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's great. Then so now you see that it's been interesting, right? So the Buddha asked them one by one to explain how they attain enlightenment. Some of them they attain enlightenment from the smell, from the touch, from the taste, then right from the realization. I mean, from see and so forth. So Buddha before gave the Ananda any kind of guideline of choose the one of the sense organs, so he can let those people explain by themselves.
It reminds me of some of the like contemporary stories of enlightenment I've read from the Rochester Zen Center, the person who founded it. He would share stories of Sesshin, and then some of the students who had achieved the initial states of enlightenment. It would be things like that. They would hear the gong of a bell, or they would have the stick hit on their back or whatever. There'd be something that would kind of tip them over into it, and it could be a different sense that triggered it. So it's really cool having experienced like the contemporary Zen teachings and the teachings that flow from this sutra and the understanding, the enlightened understanding, and then getting to go back and like actually reading the sutra and seeing the roots of it. It's very satisfying.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Let's just end today then. Okay.
Thank you, Tai.